Well, I am Adriana Amado, a basketball coach in Santo André, Apaba, and today I'm talking with Coach Dan Hughes. Hughes, yes.
Hughes. Yeah.
Yeah. Assistant coach in USA national team and
Yeah.
head coach in Seattle Storm. And you have a big, big experience in basketball, in national teams, in WNBA, in college. Is it right?
Yeah.
Well, um, you are a winner, coach. The last time was in 2018 with Storm, no?
Yeah.
And please tell us, what do you do to build a championship culture, and how do you do that?
Well, that's a really good question, to be honest with you. And I'm so glad to have a chance to talk with you. And you and I have shared back and forth along the way a little bit. And one thing about being older is that I've had a lot of experiences. I have coached 20 years on the men's side and now 22 on the women's side. I've been a head coach for the last 20 years, and I've been an assistant coach for 16 in between. I've coached all the way from high school to professional. And to answer your question, the first thing that has to be in place, I think, is your culture. You know, I know we as coaches, and rightfully so, immediately go to we need players. But you need players that can operate a culture where you get better, where they're good teammates, where they work at they're always trying to get better at their skills. They're trying to get better as a team. That you need tough people. You need people that understand the world's not always easy. You've got to embrace the grind a little bit of that anything worthwhile is going to, that journey is going to take you on. And I think when you can match, and there's different cultures, there's a way I do it now. And to be honest with you, 20 years ago,
Okay.
I was probably a little bit different in how I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you got to match a little bit of the culture that you're helping to create on a daily basis with players who can be successful in that kind of culture. And like I look at a lot of coaches that I admire, and they're different than me.
Okay.
And that's good. I learn from them. It doesn't mean that I try to be them,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you have to establish a culture of excellence. You got to there's got to be a day-to-day mission that you're on, that the players join you on, and that's one of trying to be excellent, and the things that can point you towards being excellent. And that's the long kind of answer to. I was at San Antonio for 12 years and then stepped away, and wasn't sure whether I'd coach again or not. I'd had a long and good career, but Seattle came and asked if I would be interested in coaching their team. And the main reason that I did it was the players. I looked at the players and I said, you know what, they kind of match the culture that I would establish and that I like to have. And so I thought it was a mix. And I think we have to do good jobs of that in coaching if you want to have a championship.
Perfect, perfect. And how do you and your staff make a season plan? I mean, technical, tactical. How is your game philosophy?
Yeah, well, a lot of it I think goes to communication, and I think a lot of it has to do with kind of empowering coaches within your staff to do what they do well. And that's one of the things that are really important to me now, is that I give ownership to the staff of certain things. Maybe Uh, I have a coach named Gary Kloppenberg, and he's really good defensively, and I give him a lot of ownership there. I have a former player in Noel Quinn who's really good at kind of play calling and kind of thinking that. I have a individual coach named Ryan Webb, and I kind of give them the ability to own part of our planning, part of our philosophy. And so I listen to them a lot. You know, at the end of the day, I try to put the pieces together to make this nice puzzle. But the truth is, I listen to them a great deal. And I try to put together a plan that has the ability to empower them, but yet I manage.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I learned to do it.
Perfect. I have a looking for the first what I look in a game is a defense. I like it. What characteristics of a great and strong defense?
I'm the same way you are. I have to tell you, you know, I start from a defensive end. I think the thing that people don't spend enough time on, and it's the first thing I do, is transition defense.
Okay.
I think you've got to be good in transition defense, or your entire half-court defense, or all the components of your defense will be compromised. And so I spend a lot of time developing priorities in transition defense into players' minds and getting them a chemistry to work with each other in that part where we haven't scored or we have scored. And now, you know, we're taking the position of a defender, and how do we build transition defense so we can get into the 5-on-5 half court? That to me is the essence of beginnings from a defensive standpoint. And I've had some I had some incredibly good defensive teams early in my career, and they were defensive built players. You know, they appreciated defense. They had strength. They had lateral movement. And now I've coached some players in the latter part of my career, especially Seattle, that are offensive minded. They're honestly very, very smart, very offensive minded. And I've had to kind of take defense in a different way, a little bit more disruptive, a little bit more with decisions and rotations and different things like that. But I think you want to start with transition defense, and then I think you want to honestly evaluate the talents of your team so you can put them in the right spot to be successful.
Nice, nice. What do you think of this new style where players are shooting more three-point shots instead of the perimeter, and the post players are playing more outside the paint instead closer to the ring? What do you think?
I like it. Now, I have some of those players.
Yeah.
Now, if I didn't have some of those players, maybe I'd feel differently. But I like it. I think it's a fun way to play. I think that it opens the game up. I'm a big believer in the three shot. I mean, we're getting ready for our draft in the WNBA in a week. And I'll tell you, two things matter greatly to me from an offensive evaluation is one, can they pass the ball? You know, is the assist to turnover ratio good? That is important to me. The second thing is, can they shoot the three? I was fortunate in 218, the team you mentioned, I probably could shoot the three at all five positions. And it was a difference maker.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. You're a head coach in Seattle and assistant coach in national team. And what is necessary to build a great relationship between coaches and assistants? You have the both vision. How to build it?
Yeah, I try to use a little bit of both to make each other better. when I'm an assistant coach on the national team for Don Staley, who is our head coach, I try to do the things that I think good assistant coaches do for me when I'm the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I try to be a good listener. And by that, a lot of times, you know, you'll discuss things and you'll kind of see where it might be an area that you can help staff and you can help the head coach. And then you're willing to do that. But in some cases, you know, you're kind of a good listener and understanding, you know, kind of what the direction is and how can you help that direction, you know. And I listen a lot. You know, I try to as an assistant coach have a really good ability to understand some of the discussions we're having. And then you know, there's a time to be adding to the conversation, and there's a time to keep quiet, just to be honest, you know.
Yeah.
And I appreciate both of those in assistant coaches, and I try to bring that, you know, to the staff. And I think at the end of the day, with USA basketball, I try to do what the players do, and that is a very selfless approach. You know, it's not about me. It's about what can we do to help the direction we're going as a staff or as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And our players do that, and I try to do that as an assistant coach. There'll be a time where maybe I may need to weigh in, but there also may be a time where I just help the direction by you know, being a part of it, not necessarily a leader of it. You know?
Okay. I ask it because I am assistant coach here, and I was assistant for too many big coaches, and we have to know the coach. We have to know what they prefer, and to know if you have to talk more or less. It's not too easy, but
You said it
it's
really well.
very good.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting about my situation as an assistant coach is that the staff that I'm serving on, they've all intersected my career.
Uh-huh.
Don Staley played for me the first job I had in the WNBA.
Yeah.
Cheryl Reeve, who was an assistant coach with me, was my assistant in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Jen Rosati, who is the other assistant, played for me in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And so it is such a wonderful gift from God that I get to interact with these people at this point in my career, you know, and they're highly accomplished and they're mega successful.
Wow.
And it's really fun to kind of circle back and now work with them at a latter part of my career. So it's been a real blessing, and I've learned a lot. And I've learned a good assistant coach does a lot of work, and I have carried the appreciation over when I go back to Seattle and I see that happening.
Wow, it's beautiful. The WNBA and FIBA have different rules. Do players need to adapt to play a FIBA tournament, championships? How do you and your staff do for make this adaptation?
Well, I think you make a good point. I think we're aided by the fact that a lot of our players have a good international feel. They have traveled to countries, yours and others. They are really knowledgeable. Most of them have some great experiences, some great knowledge, and so that really helps. But I think you also have to understand, you know, kind of how the game's played and respect it. You know, how it's going to be officiated. The timeout situations are different. And they need to spend a little time, you know, being aware of that, and they do. The players are very good about that. But the other thing I think simply is when you have veteran leadership who has done it, the
Mhm.
players help you too. They tell each other, you know what? Yeah, we got to play 3 games here in the medal round, one after the other. Take care of yourself, eat right, sleep right, because for us to win this, we've got to win 3 straight games now.
Okay, okay. And you, with a lot of great players, how to name the roster for a national team? What qualities need to have? What qualities the player need to have?
Well, in the United States, there's a committee that selects the team, and we really don't select them as coaches. We coach them.
Okay.
But to answer your question, I think you've got to kind of come into this group with an idea that you'll do whatever you can do to contribute. You know, and these are great players who are used to playing 30 minutes and averaging big numbers. They may come into this team and say, okay, if I'm going to play 10 minutes, I'm going to play great 10 minutes. You know, if I'm going to be a player coming off the bench and where they almost all of them usually start, that's what I'll do. And I think you got to have a little bit of that kind of culture that you do that for each other. And that's, I think that's how you create a kind of culture that the United States has been fortunate to have had for several years now.
Understand. Um, is a WNBA coach also an educator? Educator. How important is it to players in and outside the court? Because now they are professionals players, you know, but the coaches are educator too. How is it important for them?
I'm not quite sure I understand. Ask your question to me again.
Uh, we are coaches and we are educator.
Yes.
We educate. How important it is to do it with WNBA players because they are professionals. They can think that I don't need that. I'm a professional, but we can educate for life, for game, you know?
Yes. I think it's essential. I think it's very, very important. And let me give you some examples because there's, you know, when you're dealing with older players and WNBA players, they have a lot of experiences and they communicate with each other if they're, you know, normal leaders. They communicate. Well, it's important that the art of teaching not only is involved between the coaches to the players, but even player to player. You know, there are successful ways to learn. There are successful ways to communicate.
Okay.
And you may not even realize it as a coach, but if you're doing that, there's a pretty good chance that some of your leaders on your team are going to use similar styles to reach their teammates.
Okay.
And to me, I think it's important that a coach teach, but sometimes I think it's not exactly how people see it. It might be sometimes teaching a player, but sometimes it might be teaching an assistant coach who teaches a player. And sometimes it might be teaching a leader how to teach a teammate.
Yeah.
Because if they're really good leaders, they learn how to educate and use the art of teaching each other in their communication. And I think in really healthy cultures, your leaders on the court are way more powerful than me on the bench.
Well, I understand. How do you see the basketball in American continent? USA is sovereign. And what do you think about Brazilians' reception and also Argentina, Colombia development?
Oh, I absolutely. You know, this past year we were at the AmeriCup, and a lot of the teams that populated that were exactly what you're talking. We went down to Argentina with another group from the United States. I absolutely loved it because it gave me a perspective of the Americas, as you said it. It taught me a lot. It gave me an appreciation, I think, for basketball in the different spots. And it's just funny because, you know, I paid a lot of attention a little bit to, you know, I'd see the flags, I'd see the fans. I would, I tended to read more about it. Music wise, I even would notice music things that I bought a DVD because it was filmed in Colombia. And I thought, well, that's really neat because I had been around a lot of that. Argentina, the same way. I picked up some music and then some video and different things, but it just gives you a perspective that helps you understand each other better.
Okay.
And basketball wise, but also just living wise, you know, and appreciation, especially in the time we're living right now where our whole world is dealing with a crisis we're sharing with each other, a very difficult crisis, but we're sharing it with each other.
Do you think that the level of basketball in South America is better?
I think it's moving in the right direction. I think we're fortunate in the United States because we have a larger area,
Okay.
more people, and we
Uh-huh.
also have a lot of levels of training built up, you know. But I definitely think it's moving in the right direction. I definitely, and Brazil, to me, for example, I'll just take Brazil, absolutely love how hard the players play. Absolutely love the culture that they share with their fans.
Mm-hmm.
It is, you know, that's how I like to play the game. And I see the enthusiasm that they have. I see the extra efforts that they make, you know, and really start to get it. I know every time when we played Brazil, you know, you're always worried that at some point they're going to take momentum and it's going to go their direction. And then the whole arena is going to be like, you know, right behind them. They have a great, and I saw that with different countries, and it just made me appreciate some of the love that we all have from where we're from.
I'm happy because we are in a better way, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Which country has shown more improvement lately, and how do you think they are going to at Olympics and World Cup? I'm talking in the road, Belgium, Australia, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's two I would name. Nigeria, I was very impressed to watch. Australia's always really impressed me. Puerto Rico, I'll tip my hat to Puerto Rico because I've seen a lot of improvement. The coach from Puerto Rico came to visit me in San Antonio years ago, long before I was coaching on the USA side, and they've made some. So it's becoming, I think it's growing in a lot of countries. But those are some examples that just popped to mind right away.
Perfect. And the last one, in a learning process and to increase the basketball level, how important is the repetition and intensity? We talk here in Brazil more about that because we don't make our players to make repetition, intensity. What's important?
You know, one of the things that I try to do with every player that I'm around, I coach, is try to figure out how they learn. Okay. And whether I was coaching men or women, there's a lot of players that learn a great deal by repetition, just to be honest with you. Now, I think I kind of like instinctful players. I don't like choreographing. When I say repetition, it may be a matter of priorities that go in their head. It might be, and as a coach, you would probably find me to be very repetitive. I might say the same things a lot. I might do the same drills a lot. But yet I kind of have a look at basketball that is about playing basketball and not about it. I'm very whole part as opposed to pieces, for example. But
Okay.
I do believe that repetition is been proven to be very effective, in a transfer of information. And we as coaches, it's not so much what we know, it's what we can share that is received. And so I'm a very repetitive coach, and I say a lot of the same things, but I also think there's some theories of learning that say that's not a bad way to go.
Perfect. Coach, it was amazing. I enjoy it a lot. I hope and I wish that all coaches enjoy our conversation. Thank you for your time to share and, well, stay with us these minutes, and thank you.
Well, thank you for creating this. I am so thankful during this time period. Things like this, I think, are blessings, are absolute blessings. And I think you've reached out and you're doing things to help your fellow coaches, and hopefully you and I get so much from the conversations I'm having during this last 2 or 3 week period that as difficult as this period is, I'm very thankful. And I'm thankful for people like you who are making things kind of work in the situation we are. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.